well, good morning again, and welcome to Coffee Talk, Getting Rad in West Texas with Salesforce. My name is Wendy Hamster-Smith, and I'm Director of Sales Enablement and Enrollment Rx. And we are so excited you have joined us today to learn how West Texas is adapting their recruitment strategies in light of the changing world we're all going through right now, and talk a little bit about how a flexible CRM is supporting those changes. So I hope everybody has had their coffee this morning because we have a very full agenda today. First, we're going to go through and introduce our team of speakers today. And then Jess from Salesforce is here to talk to us a little bit about some key trends in higher education. Then we're going to turn it over to Virginia from West Texas to do a little coffee talk about some of the innovative ways they're adapting their recruitment strategies. Then I'll show you just a little bit about Enrollment Rx and how a flexible CRM can meet those challenges that you're seeing. And at the end, we'll leave some time for a Q&A. So at any point during the webinar, please feel free to drop some questions in the Q&A box on Zoom, and Misty Mollenbach, our Director of Client Success, will help facilitate that at the end of the webinar. All right. Well, first, as I mentioned, my name is Wendy Hamster-Smith, and before joining Enrollment Rx, I spent 15 years working at St. Louis University, doing pretty much every admission-related job under the sun, including student tour guide. And for the last 7 years, I was Associate Dean of Admissions Operations, and I implemented Salesforce in Enrollment Rx. So I have about 7 years as a customer and a user of the products. Joining me today is my pleasure to introduce Virginia Leathers, who is coming from West Texas A&M, who also has about 15 years of higher education experience. Along the way, Virginia has implemented several CRMs, and she is a rock star admin. So we are very excited to have her joining us today. I want to say hi, Virginia.
Good morning, everyone.
Awesome. And then with us, we have two of our great partners from Salesforce.org. Oh, I think we need a mute maybe. There we go. All right. And then with us from Salesforce.org, we have Jessica Talbert. Jessica brings over a decade of recruitment and admissions experience as both a customer and a partner. And she is very focused now on bringing innovative solutions for the recruitment and admission stratosphere. So Jess.
Good morning, everybody. I've got my you probably can't see because of the sun. I got my Salesforce coffee mug, and I've got my West Texas maroon on. So excited to be here.
Very nice. All right. And last but not least, we have Andy. Andy is a senior account executive who is based in the Texas. He has had the good fortune to be working with. And he serves and supports schools in the Texas area. And he is very passionate about finding ways for schools to use technology in order to innovate and meet their institutional goals.
On, and I have my coffee. So looking forward to this meeting today. Thank you, Wendy.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys. And I'm going to actually turn it over to Jessica, who is here today to share with us some trends she is seeing right now in the higher education environment, especially during the last couple months or so. So I'll turn it over to Jessica.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. And thank you all for joining today. We're really excited to have you. I was with Wendy when we went to West Texas last summer, back when we were able to travel, and the group is so great. So I'm really excited to have Virginia share her story and for you to learn a little bit more about one of our great partners in Enrollment Rx. But let's talk about what's going on in the industry right now. I mean, this is I'm sure this word is overused a ton, but an unprecedented time. And it was even before COVID-19 hit. So, some of the immediate concerns that we're seeing, we're doing a lot of research with some of our partners, like our implementation partners, but also our education partners like Niche and Edge Ventures. And we're trying to look at the trends and see how we can be of assistance in the recruiting and admission space. Because as you'll notice, Salesforce, we are investing heavily in recruiting and admissions this year. So some of the immediate concerns that we're seeing, and this has been true for the last few months, is the pushing of decision deadlines. But even before the NACAC vote that sort of made May 1st may be a little less important in the world of admissions. Now we had a lot of people pushing their decision deadlines past May 1. You know, some are looking at June 1, so they're coming up here. Some have even pushed it to September, and some have just gone to rolling admissions. We're seeing a lot more virtual yield events, and now moving into virtual registration onboarding and even virtual tours for the juniors, because we all know that now in the late spring, summer, when primarily when your juniors might come to check out your campuses. So having those virtual events and trying to bring that same experience and that same feeling of belonging to your campus in a virtual manner is a big concern for many in the recruiting and admission space. And then, you know, future considerations. I'm a bit avid Twitter follower, and I'm following the AP tests closely this week for those of you that are also looking at that. But acceleration of that test optional movement. You know, hundreds of schools have indicated that they're going at least temporarily test optional. And we're going to see, I think, that accelerate. That might stick. And so what does that look like? And currently, you know, with what's going on with the AP tests and how are students going to be able to take tests at home effectively is a question that I think is looming for the whole industry. You know, the continuation of virtual experiences. What does this look like in the fall? What does it look like if we continue this, you know, indefinitely? Are we going to have a hybrid of on-campus and virtual experiences? And then ultimately, you know, one of the things that we are concerned about is enrollment suffering. You know, the last time that the US went into a recession, we had an enrollment issue. And so what does that look like, and how can you sort of combat that recruitment problem that you might have going forward, and trying to find those best fit students that might look different than your best fit students from last cycle. So on the next slide, Wendy, can you move to the next slide? There we go. Wonderful. So, you know, one of the things that we're working really closely with at Salesforce is, you know, kind of our path forward together. We want to make sure that you can stabilize, you can work to reopen your new business as usual when you are ready, and sort of evolve your institution. So some of the things that we are doing is some of this research that we're doing with some of our partners, as I mentioned. So we have seen a lot responding to the new shifts in prospect attitudes and behavior. So 71% are using virtual tours and events to see what schools are like. I think that statistic's really interesting, because I would actually look and see what is the blocker for the other 30%. You know, are they just not interested in your school? Are there access issues that you need to address to make sure that they can still search and use virtual tools to find the best fit school? And then again, 70% are relying more on those search sites, more on student reviews, more on social media. Social media is huge right now, especially as many students are sort of declaring where they're going to go. And we've seen plenty of research saying that word of mouth is one of the key indicators, especially for traditional undergrad students, of where they'll attend. And then the last one, 37% of seniors and 44% of juniors plan to go to a college closer to home. So again, those best fit students might look a lot different than your best fit students from last year. So on the next slide. You know, this is a great quote from one of our enrollment leaders that we sort of asked how they were feeling. And it said, you know, all of our numbers were great 4 weeks ago, year over year increase, but it's reversed, deposits tapering off, and uncertainty scary, and we were swarming virtual virtual student visits with great success. So I think the message here is, you know, everyone in admissions, I worked in, much like Wendy, I worked every job in admissions that you can imagine. And one of the things that we always do is we always rise, right? We always come together and work for our students, but sort of not knowing how to plan for next year and having the data to support what's happening, you know, what is attributed to this COVID, what's attributed to other things, can be scary. So it's definitely a time of uncertainty that, you know, we and our partners like Enrollment Rx are hopeful to help you with. And then just on this last slide before I turn it over for the coffee talk, you know, we do have our education cloud solutions that focus on every area of the life cycle. So some of these areas that you might not be tapping into right now, but again, as you're looking to sort of pivot and and change your recruiting strategy, some of those things with how do we maximize advertising or social engagement? How do we maximize awareness building? It might even be in your own backyard. How do we look at everything with recruiting and the shift to virtual, whether it be temporary or permanent? How do we make sure that if we have to, we can review applications from home and seamlessly pass those virtual bins from person to person, because I don't think anybody wants to take a giant bin of paper and drive it to their coworker's house. And then onboarding, again, these are things you're all dealing with right now, and I'm sure that you're just doing what you can and helping those students, but let's think strategically about what's working about this time and what's maybe not, and how we can take the pieces that are and make you a more effective recruiter in the next cycle. So with that, I will turn it over to Wendy and Virginia, and I'm excited. I'll be on the webinar, so if you have any questions for the Q&A, put them in the chat for me, and excited to hear this coffee chat.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for that information and for your continued partnership. So now it is my pleasure to have Virginia join us for a little coffee talk. So as I mentioned, West Texas A&M is in the process of going live with Enrollment Rx's recruitment, admission, decision solutions on top of Salesforce. And Virginia has been an integral part of that whole process. So I want to say to Virginia, thank you so much. I know this is a very busy time of year as you're going through just regular recruitment cycle, plus implementing a CRM, plus all the other things you're handling today. So just want to say thank you again for the time. All right, so let's chat. For those of us on the call who are not familiar with West Texas, can you tell us a little bit about your institution and the type of students you serve?
Sure, would love to. So West Texas A&M was founded in 1910. We are part of the Texas A&M system. We serve West Texas in the top 26 counties of the Panhandle in Texas, in case you were wondering. The student enrollment hovers around a little over 10,000 students. We are designated as a Hispanic serving institution, so we have a wide range of diversity on campus. We host 60 undergraduate programs, along with 38 master's and 2 doctoral programs. And if you ever want to come out and see us, we are very close to Polidoro Canyon, which is the second largest canyon outside the Grand Canyon.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I had the pleasure of coming to visit, but I didn't get to see the canyon based on, I think, weather and time. So maybe next time. All right. So as Jessica has also kind of set the scene, everybody is going through some unique challenges that are happening right now. But what are some very specific challenges that West Texas is facing in response to COVID and school closure and just the general area?
Sure. Well, like you were saying, we found out about a year ago that our CRM, EMIS, was basically ending its life as our customer service relationship product. And so on top of all of the fun things that COVID has brought to us, we've had to make a lot of fun adjustments on the fly. And so with that, we've, of course, like everyone else, we have moved to all online courses. Here at WT, we have been pioneers in online education since 1997. And so our IT staff has done a wonderful job, headed by CIO James Webb, handling that transition over the past couple of months. We also have all staff and faculty offsite. So we kind of worked through a process where we offboarded people on campus to their homes and different places. And so we have a lot of people remoting in and working on their computers through that process. We also closed down our personal on-campus tours just for the safety of all of the people who would be coming and visiting us. And so with a lot of that, we've had to do a lot of things remotely, which has been interesting. We work with a partner called UVisit as our virtual campus tour provider. And so one of the biggest things we've done is work through the process of hosting live guided tours through our UVisit. We also recently had our virtual graduation that was very beautiful and wonderfully put on. And so like everyone else, we are just working through those pieces as we figure out how we're going to handle COVID going forward.
All right. Well, this time, as you've mentioned, offboarding your employees to their homes, making sure that you are adjusting how you're presenting visits and, like you said, graduation. So as you're doing this, I'm sure, coupled with the fact that you're going through a CRM implementation, how have you identified, or what have you identified as some manual processes that you want to change, and how are you looking to automate some of the things that have been more of a time suck versus a time saver?
Sure. So a lot of the different pieces here at WT with our EMIS have been still a lot of paper manual processes. We have done a really good job of keeping up with the different pieces as much as we can, but the emerging technologies that we're seeing on the market nowadays are wonderful in making sure that there's a larger process of automation and definitely going paperless. And so with those pieces, one of the biggest things that we still are handling are those pesky little inquiry cards that you're getting in a variety of different places, whether you're mailing them out in your pieces and then they're getting sent back to you, or you're taking them to high schools or college fairs and getting them filled out. And so one of our biggest challenges was our actual online inquiry card form that was attached to our website. We have just shifted to a brand new website as of Friday, so it went live. And so now we're integrating the pieces with it with the Salesforce Enrollment Rx. And so with that, our inquiry card can now be embedded on our website. And so before, what was happening was that the student or prospective was looking and filling out that card. That card would go to an email. That email would be opened and then manually having to be put into the CRM. And again, that is a very, very time-consuming process. And so now with our new website and also the product with Enrollment Rx, we're going to be able to automate virtually almost every single form that we have online that is collecting prospective student information. The other piece that we're going to do is that we're going to start eliminating paper letters. They're time consuming and also expensive. And so those pieces will be transitioned to either email or the ability to push that information onto our portals. We're part of since we are here in Texas, a lot of us use only just the Texas Common application, which does not have a portal for students to then find out what their checklist items are, because that information goes to institutions across the state of Texas. And so with the ERX process, we're going to have our own internal application to WT with a lot of more functionality, and then also be able to import the Texas Common app and merge that with our portal that is going to be hosted with the ERX product. And so we're super excited so that students can not only see the checklist items that we're needing from them, but they also have the opportunity to load those documents directly into the system under their own individual unique identifiers. And so some other pieces that we're looking at of course, we're going to automate our visit inquiries into our system, but also we're looking at having more automated processes for our test scores, ACT, SAT. We're going to go completely paperless with our AP as well. And so we're looking at all of those different efficiencies that are going to help our processing staff and also the rest of the university see those pieces. We want to make sure our recruiters and our academic advisors and faculty eventually have full access to our CRM so that they can see all the different pieces in one area. Also, after our first set of implementation and rollout, we're also going to be looking at automating easy admissions decisions. That's one thing that we know that we have the ability to do, and it will definitely cut that lag time between once a student submits all of their documentation and then gets the decision as quickly as possible. So we are definitely looking forward to all of the new pieces that we're going to be using.
You've definitely been busy for sure. And congratulations on the new website rollout as well. I know that was a big undertaking amidst all the other things that you're doing.
Yes.
So when we talked, I guess maybe last week or the week before, you shared with us some of the challenges that your incoming freshman class is going to be had as their senior year. So as you mentioned, you serve the panhandle of Texas, and students were receiving their senior year in very different ways. So can you talk through now, how have you made some changes to maybe the enrollment requirements, or how are you looking, as you mentioned, there's some few things that you're doing to automate and to eliminate paper, but what are some changes you're making to your application checklists, et cetera?
Sure. So students, were uprooted in the middle of their final semester of their senior year. And with that transition, it caused a lot of difficulties for students. We know that we want to make sure that we're serving them the best way as possible, and also allowing the students to know that we have their back, however they make their decisions for choosing their institutions. And so one of the things, we actually hosted several things that we worked on to make that process easier for students. One of our biggest things was we waived the application fee for domestic students, both on the undergraduate side and the graduate side. And so they were able to apply without having to worry about that extra fees, so that they could put that money to use on whether that they're needing to boost their web Wi-Fi in order to do classes from home, those different pieces. And so we wanted to offer that. The second thing that we did is we went through and we went ahead and made sure that the scholarships that we offer here at WT, we increased those scholarship offers for both transfer and freshmen, and then we extended those scholarship deadlines as well. We know that there's going to be some very hard decisions being made by families, knowing that they have maybe possibly lost employment, or their funds for college have gotten hit that were saved on the stock market. And so we want to make sure that we're funding as much as possible that we can. The next step we did is that we went ahead and we pushed we do all physical orientations. And so we went ahead and moved everything online. We were doing some online transition for transfer students, but we boosted that up and broke it out for all the different student types. And so we have not only online orientation, but now we also host Zoom meetings for parents to come on and ask their questions on what we are doing as an institution to be able to help that transition in the fall. Next, we made the decision that we were going to start enrolling students in classes much earlier. So before, we were looking at, the traditional June, July, August timeframe. And so we actually started enrolling students that had all of their documentation in and were set as of late April. And so we're seeing a much more proactive proactive engagement with our students, making sure that they go out and do the online orientation and then get their choices for where they want to be in their classes by enrolling. For the summer, though, we have decided that with our summer 2, we are offering a tuition deal. Freshmen have the opportunity to take an online 3-hour course in our summer 2 session for only $200. And so that will help our seniors who have been out a while, who may or may not have been continuing their coursework, kind of get back into the swing of being able to handle those be able to study and practice their skill set ready for their fall freshman onboarding.
Yeah, I know that transition from high school to college is already a struggle for some students as they get used to the rigor of college courses, but even more so now if they haven't had that ability. So that's fantastic. Are you seeing a lot of students take you up on that offer?
Yes, we rolled it out only about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and so we're already seeing a large interest in those that class availability. And also, one of the other pieces I wanted to add is that we also expanded our individual review process. We knew that there were going to be students that what we consider are late bloomers that may have not necessarily had the ability to sign up for the earlier ACT and SAT scheduled tests, and so now that there aren't any more currently available, we wanted to make sure that they were still able to be admitted to the university. And so with that, we have waived the ACT and SAT or SAT requirement, and we're allowing their high school counselors to provide a letter of recommendation in those cases. And so that has given those students an additional piece that they're able to do and be admitted to the university.
Yeah, that's fantastic to be able to give them an opportunity that otherwise would not have happened. And that's actually a good segue, because as you mentioned, test dates are being canceled or postponed. Virtual events are replacing in-person college fairs. We don't know what high school visits are going to look like for us in the fall. So those are usually great sources for lead gen for your next year's applicant funnel. So with that not maybe being as robust of a source for you, what are some alternative approaches that West Texas is taking in order to build your class for fall 2021?
So we are looking at several different options going into the new academic season. Specifically, we are working on building our better relationships with our community college partners. We know that there are a lot of students that are going to be very cost-driven, knowing the situation with the economy. And so we want to make sure that if they do choose to go to a community college, that there is a better and smoother connection with us as a four-year institution for them to enter as a transitioning transfer student. And so one of our big things that we're looking at is our transfer credit hours. We're looking at our academic advising. When we host counselors that go out to the local community colleges and help with that planning of that transition. And so we know that we're going to be able to kind of do the additional recruiting. A secondary piece of that is we're also boosting our reverse transfer process, making sure that when those students do transition, we make sure that the community colleges are able to get the information they need back to them to make sure that they have their requirements for their completions of their associate's degrees. The other thing that we do is that we have partnered with Enrollment Fuel. They help us do targeted marketing for our inquiry pools. And so they host online portals and emails and nudges for those students to help them get directed to our new website. So that way we can start looking at what things are being looked at on our website, tracking those pieces, and being able to use those to help direct the marketing campaigns towards those students. We are also then, of course, the better integration with our new website. We're going to be tracking clicks. We have our embedded forms. We're going to make it easier for students to contact us. The other pieces, we're asking our colleges within our university to start looking and identifying outside organizations that will help us direct us to possible inquiries for those students. FFA, Future Business Leaders of America, professional organizations for nursing, firefighting, those type of things where we haven't necessarily dug in really deep, but we know that there are a lot of different organizations out there that would be willing to help us do the recruiting for those students to college. One of the other things that then we here in Texas, we know that there are other states out there that have partnerships with K through 12 that once a student identifies they're a senior, they opt in, and then the state provides those contact information to the individual universities. And so we're going to be reaching out to our state representatives for both K through 12 and the Department of Labor on hopefully gaining some information on people who are in situations where they may need to be either reskilled or looking to further their education. And so those are just some of the ideas that we're working on for new lead generation going into the next academic cycle.
Yeah, I definitely like that discussion about trying to use your faculty's connections and knowledge of their own subject matter to help build up a funnel for them. So that's great. That gets them involved with the recruitment process, but also, finding areas that maybe weren't traditionally a lead gen source for you. And I know that, everything that you've talked about today is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that you've done so far and that you probably will be doing the next 6, 9, 12 months from now. But kind of fast forwarding a year from now, May of 2021, what are some elements from all the campaigns that you've been doing, the new strategies that you're hoping to measure, and how would you gauge success? How would it look like a successful year for West Texas?
So, we here at West Texas, we know that Texas has become a more competitive market. We have a lot of outside states, institutions coming here to work on trying to gather Texas students and take them out of state. And so for us, it's going to be also maintaining our market share, but also hopefully, doing a modest increase as much as we possibly can, whether it's 1 or 2%. What we're looking at for measurements, though, for us is looking at how the CRM cuts down on turnaround time on the things that we know that have been manual, measuring that turnaround time, open rates of our emails, looking at our inquiry to submitted application to becoming enrolled. And so having those dashboard measurements right there in real time reports on those different student types, seeing how quickly the documentation is coming in with the different options on the portal, whether the student is uploading it themselves or that we're getting it through the traditional method of the document parchments and eScript and those opportunities, or just flat out mail. And so seeing those and making sure that we can actually gather those documents quickly and making faster admit decisions is also important to us. They would need to be faster, but they also need to be efficient and timely as much as we possibly can. We also want to start looking at how recruiters use the system, how much time users are actually spending on it, making sure that we are seeing how students interact with our recruiters via that message, how many text messages were sent, how many emails were sent, those type of pieces that we haven't had before really. And then conversion rates on our lead sources are probably is our next biggest step, is that we want to make sure that the money that we're investing in our marketing and advertising, we want to know where they're coming from, are they using those methods, and then are they actually providing the leads that often end up to enrollment. And so we have quite a few good places to start with tracking those items. It will be, seeing the conclusion of that in 2021.
Yeah, and especially as you're looking for new lead sources, right? I mean, we work with a population that's always cutting edge when it comes to trends, and more now than ever. So being able to identify what are the sources that students are looking to connect with colleges, how you're reaching out to them, that's fantastic. It's great. And just to, as we've been able to get to know each other this past almost a year, as I mentioned before, you have a lot of experience working in higher education. You have a real passion for technology and efficiency. So can you just share just some of your thoughts about, as you went through the process of getting a new CRM, what are some kind of takeaways or must-haves that you require for new CRM, and has any of that changed now, now that everything else has changed around you? Can you reflect a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the biggest things that drove us to looking at Salesforce and the Enrollment Rx product was looking at the university full life cycle. We want to be able to integrate as much as possible, not only from the admissions and enrollment management, but also tracking, student engagement in classrooms, looking at academic advising appointments, making sure the people that staff and faculty have the documentation, have the communication chains that they need to make meaningful engagement with those students and building those relationships. That is very important for us. And then further out than that, we also want to make sure that our students, once they graduate, how do we keep them as engaged alumni? How do we turn them back into people who are interested in giving back to the university, whether it's their time or their talents or their funds? And so part of that process for us was also starting to take apart the system that we currently have and all the different little pieces that we've kind of pulled together and unifying them into one system. And so I think that that will be one of our biggest accomplishments. I know that it's going to take time. I keep telling everybody, you know, we have just hit the tip of the iceberg with what the capabilities of Salesforce with Enrollment Rx is. But, you know, when you take a look at us in a year to 2 years to even 3 years, we're going to be a much more efficient and communicative organization. And so with that, we also know that there's a lot of flexibility with both products. There are great people with Enrollment Rx that I've brought ideas to who will sit down and start thinking, okay, this is a great idea. How do we actually build it in the system, and how do we roll it out? And I really enjoy working with those people, because it gives a great opportunity to also create products that other universities and institutions will want to grab onto. One of our biggest pieces was having to be compatible with an older version of Colleague. We wanted to make sure that we weren't having to upend every piece of technology that we have, because it has served us very, very well. And so making sure that we are able to move files smoothly, have automated processes going back and forth between the two was very important to us, especially since we want to make sure that if a student is in the system and they're in their portal, that they can see holds easier so that they can get those cleared up before that they have to re-enroll. And so there are a lot of opportunities with that. The other piece is that we wanted a product that gave us a lot of support on our product onboarding, making sure that we had that one-on-one communication as much as possible. It was not on my radar that I would be doing an implementation virtually because, you know, those things are a little bit harder to do when you're talking about everything remote. But the commitment of Enrollment Rx and Salesforce being able to help us with that process and transitioning to being remote has been wonderful. And then also the continuing development with training. I mean, with the pieces that we've been given and the training that's out there, we're going to be able to be up and running. We've done a really good job in 6 months. We're still hitting all of our we're meeting all of our goals and benchmarks that we have set, so that way we can go live as soon as possible. We are still on board with doing that on August 1st, which is still a month ahead of when we go with our Apply Texas, usually in September. So we've done an amazing job with the group that we have here with Enrollment Rx and Salesforce.
Yeah, well, definitely kudos for you and the team. I know, again, I did implementation. I didn't have to do it virtually. So I give you just mad props for the amazing work you're doing there. So, and again, thank you so much. As I mentioned, this is a crazy time for you. And as you've shared with us, all the different kind of pieces you're juggling right now, again, thank you immensely for taking time and chatting. And if anyone has questions for Virginia, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A box. And she's going to stick on for a little bit longer, and then we can circle back to talk through any maybe additional details or points from what you share with us today.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you again. All right, great. Well, so as Virginia shared with us some of the overarching ideas, innovations that they're working on, I just want to take a few minutes to show you the actual products that are empowering and kind of powering those changes. So at Enrollment Rx, we call our solution the R.A.D solution, Recruitment Admissions Decisions on Salesforce. So it's a combination of our products on the Salesforce platform and then the amazing community of our clients, the people that work on both Salesforce and Enrollment Rx, in order to build a solution that's able to be responsive today, tomorrow, and years down the road. So what I'm going to do is actually show you a few things in the demo and actually walk through and kind of highlight some of the ideas that Virginia brought up and what it could look like potentially in our demo org. All right. Well, first starting off, as we all talked about, the idea of having a applicant portal that is dynamic, it is self-service, has always been something that's important for our students. As we talked before, our students in recruitment and admissions are very engaged, need to have kind of immediate responses, etc. Let me actually make sure there we go, there's my screen. All right. So as I was saying, a self-service applicant portal has always been an important element in providing that top-notch customer service. But especially as admission staff members are working more remotely, it's more important for our students to have that information they need on their own terms. So at Enrollment Rx, we build portals on top of Salesforce communities that give students the ability to check their status, for example, or determine what items are required and what are allowed to be uploaded. And as Virginia mentioned, there is a lot of changing happening around requirements that might be different today versus in a couple months, and maybe for the whole next year. So this application checklist is easily controlled by your admins to make changes to those admission requirements. Things such as text boxes, as we're pushing out information to students, you need that content to change based on the program, the student, the status, etc. We also love putting social media feeds in. Many of us are getting our news and our updates through social media feeds, and so a student can see what's happening on campus if they can't actually be there. Including your assigned admission counselor, for example. So the student doesn't have to go through the website to try to find who should I reach out to if I have questions. You can have that front and center. Same thing with events. Again, both Jessica and Virginia mentioned that events are all becoming virtual, and so we want to make sure that students are seeing the opportunity to be able to come see campus remotely if at the time being. And then inside an application portal, you want to make sure that you have the ability to, again, be adaptive as things are changing. So with the form builder pages inside of a portal, so whether it's applications that you're importing from third-party systems or you have your own native application, you want to have the ability to control things such as required or maybe read-only, for example. Maybe you want to have rendered criteria, so only show information if I answer yes. You also want to have record selection. So choose this program if I indicate I'm a bachelor's student. Next up, as we talked about, events. So schools, again, definitely are adapting their visited events to a virtual experience. And as Virginia mentioned as well, too, orientation is becoming one that we're seeing more and more moving from an on-site to a virtual experience. And so as we move that experience online, it may look something like this, where students are able to select from different appropriate dates and then determine maybe what they can do when they visit campus, or virtually visit campus. So for example, would we meet with an admission counselor here, maybe do an advising appointment, etc., do a campus virtual tour. So all of these things can be customized. You can set caps on how many people can attend each of these virtual events. And you also can choose what student sees what. So maybe as a transfer student, I might see specific transfer appointments versus if I were a freshman. Then after I register, maybe I might see an email that will confirm details of the visit, and then also maybe reschedule if need be. All of these events are able to be easily configured through our Events Rx admin panel, which allows for a user to go through and make changes, cancel events if need be, add new ones, etc. So it's fairly simple to keep your calendar up to date. And then for your mission team members, so maybe I want to see who's registered for orientation on 5/23 in order to maybe send communication out, do follow-up, etc. All right, well, prior to orientation, of course, we have to first submit these students. And so here we have an example of a Reader RX product. So where faculty or admission counselors can come in and see information about the students that they're reviewing. So maybe just detailed information that outlines everything about the student on one screen that's designed to be mobile friendly. You might be able to drill into some additional components here to learn more about the student's previous educational history. Other schools have the ability to do multiple levels of review. So perhaps they want to see who else saw this application and reviewed it, and what did my colleagues score it as. And then as I go through and I want to make changes and score and say, yes, you know, this student is a great fit for West Texas or Enrollment Rx University, I can go in, I can save this, I can download the file if I need to, submit it, or send it on over to the next person to review. All right, and as your team is working remotely or when they're moving back onto campus, managing their schedule and the various tasks and responsibilities they have are really important. So on a homepage, for example, in Salesforce, an admission counselor can see maybe how their year over year is performing. Jessica shared the slide with us earlier this morning talking about how over the last 4 weeks, data and funnel has changed dramatically for some schools. So let's keep an eye and track when those changes are happening. You also can see such things such as admissions interviews or events you have scheduled, tasks, things that need to be done. So maybe call all my orientation attendees or to do an outreach to a brand new inquiry. Speaking of which, we have the ability to see the incoming events or the applications and inquiries that came in today, for example. So if I'm logging in, I can see right away, top of desk, what should I be working on? Another great functionality is the ability to have a calendar. So many of us are living and dying by our calendar right now. And so being able to share your calendar with your colleagues, for example, or integrate that with Gmail or Outlook, and in order to make sure you have everything together so you know your personal events that you're doing, as well as maybe potential CRM-related events such as reviewing applications, etc. And then, of course, being able to see reports and dashboards. And so managing that information. So an admission counselor might want to come in and see, how are my applications tracking? How are my goals looking? If I were managing a team, I might want to check and see, how's my staff performing? Looks like Debbie Director needs a little assistance here with all of her tasks that are overdue. But this kind of dashboard can be subscribed via an email that was pushed out to you daily, weekly, monthly, or can be incorporated on your dashboard of your homepage as well. And then last but not least, as we talked about, the idea of high school visits is going to change for many schools, and trying to adapt to that and understand how we can continue to build relationships with our high school counselors, but also be able to track things we've done in the past, etc. So here in our school visit module, you can see maybe how the school visit was the year before. Add information there. You can assign tasks for yourself to follow up, to make a phone call, send an email to make sure you're communicating with the high school guidance counselor to understand and keep in contact with them. Okay. So that was just a very quick, brief look at how you can use the Salesforce Enrollment Rx solution in order to be able to do all of these things that we've talked about today on the call, to be able to go through and make changes, have a virtual events for your students, provide them the experience to see who their mission counselor is, and to communicate to us during these, as we all said, unprecedented times. So just want to say a huge thank you for everybody on the call today. And if there are questions, we'd love to do a little Q&A with anyone on the call who's interested in talking a little bit more about what Jessica provided today, or Virginia, or myself. And I'm going to turn over to Misty to see if we have any questions.
All right, and so it looks like we do have one for Virginia. And that is that you talked a little bit about when you were working on deciding your CRM. Have you used various systems in the market, and how does Enrollment Rx and Salesforce compare in your experience based on that?
I've used several different CRMs. We have some of the older ones. Recruiter has been one. I've also used Slate as one. And so I think a lot of the rationale behind picking Enrollment Rx was more of the broader version or broader overlook of what Enrollment Rx and Salesforce could do for us for the life cycle of the student. It's when you're looking at picking your CRM, you want to look at several different factors. You want to look at the opportunities they have with flexibility. You want to look at the ability to get trained on it. You want to look at support. You want to look at cost. And so there are a lot of different groups out there, but so far as for what are the needs for West Texas A&M, Enrollment Rx is the best fit for us. Are there any other follow-up questions?
Yep, one more. So, sorry.
No.
What type of changes to your student population do you anticipate? Do you think you'll have more local students with more trepidation or about moving away?
So one of the things that we did actually within the past month is we did a closer to home media push. We wanted to make sure that the students who had additional plans that were possibly may be getting changed was that they knew that we were in the area, that we were here for them, that we had the options of online, that we also have the flexibility of being able to help them in whatever direction they go. And so we've actually seen a uptake in students that are transferring, or that they have decided that their plans are going to change. So we're going to have a little bit of a different mix of student population. Probably there will be a transition between maybe in a year or 2 years from now. There might be more students transferring out. We really hope that they'll love West Texas A&M their first year or first 2 years and never want to leave us. That's our hope for all students. But we also know that with the student population having taken the hit by both their parents, possibly their income and things, that they're shopping around. They're looking for the best option that they can possibly do right now versus maybe taking a gap year. A lot of the things that I've seen out there recently are students are waiting to see, are the students are universities going to be open in the fall? Are they going to have in-person classes? Are they all going fully online? There's also those expectations of whether, online courses are going to be cheaper than the face-to-face courses, since you're not necessarily using all the facilities at the university. And so students are definitely looking. They're definitely going out and doing more research on their institutions to make that determination. I think that we're going to see, when we're talking about holding all of the students up for enrollment, I think you're going to be looking at students that are going to be picking way later in the process, and you're going to have the resources there to onboard them as quickly as possible. And so we all need to be ready for that piece.
Great, thank you. Another question is, admissions and enrollment affect the rest of the university as a whole. So how does West Texas A&M admissions leadership plan on handling the drop in enrollment rates and explaining that to the rest of the university stakeholders? We definitely will see this as an impact. And are you anticipating stakeholders to be empathetic of your current recruitment struggles? And how do you plan to address the anticipated drop in yield rate? Sorry.
Well, right now, currently, we're actually trending up in both areas for our freshmen. And then with the past couple of weeks, we've seen an increase in interest in our transfer population. And so we are not quite sure yet how that is being impacted by staying closer to home or not. We do know that we took last year we had a fairly good increase in enrollment, and our job is to work towards either moving up a little bit or holding steady. We're hoping that it doesn't go down. If it does go down, we have a lot of factors that we have been working on over the past year that have affected our recruitment. We have onboarded a new website. We are in the middle of an implementation. We have had the coronavirus. There's a lot of pieces out there that they're going to have to look at to say, what are the contributing factors other than just the virus here at WT. I think, though, that another piece is that West Texas has done a wonderful job of being fairly conservative with their finances and not providing things that they can't afford to do. And so they're fiscally conservative. And I think that that's going to help us in the long run, as well as being able to provide the opportunity to students to have a good education at a reasonable cost. And so with that, I think that we're kind of a wait and see on how the enrollment turns out, but we are doing our best in every possible way to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Awesome. And I just have one last question for you, and it's kind of a follow-up. You talked about, standardized test scores possibly being optional, and that you have to look at that differently now. How do you think that'll impact your admissions process, thinking about merit-based scholarships, and how do you plan to deal with those changes?
So we are working with our scholarships and financial aid and offices right now to determine how we are going to be looking at that going into the future. For the different pieces of scholarships, we have looked at, the federal, FAFSAs and all the different pieces that go along with that. One of the things that we're going to be working on with our new platform is we're going to be doing a little bit more of an automation with our scholarship application. And so having some additional questions and things added to that piece based on information that we get, using some additional criteria could be a possibility. With ACT and SAT, we know that right now we're in a situation where this is just a temporary issue with ACT and SAT. We don't plan on going away from ACT and SAT currently. That is not on our plan in any sort of way. And so with the merit-based piece, we're still looking to see what other possibilities that we have for the students that are coming in the fall, with the different pieces that scholarships might be able to provide to us. So we're not quite there on seeing that we would go totally away from ACT or SAT.
All right. Well, thank you,
Perfect.
Virginia.
Thank you.
So sorry, Misty, any other questions?
No, that seems to be it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, a huge thank you, first of all, for everyone who took the time this morning to spend an hour with us. And also, again, a huge thank you for Virginia for sharing her story and her time very generously with us, as well as Jessica and Andy from Salesforce. We appreciate, as always, your partnership and support as well. So thank you again. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to any of the panelists today, feel free to email us at info@enrollmentrx.com, and I can get that contact to the appropriate people. And we will be sending a follow-up email as well. So thank you again so much. Thank you again to my co-panelists, and we look forward to seeing you again on another webinar soon. Thank you.